Right, better get this head off then. In this video I will be starting to strip down the engine on my Mark II Golf, as I recently found out the head gasket was blown. So here I'm just removing the airbox, as that's a very simple job and gets a nice chunk of it out of the way. I'm just removing ancillaries from the engine, such as the spark plug leads and distributor cap. Once the airbox was out of the way, I could easily get to the 8 bolts holding the rocker cover and timing belt cover down. I have already had these cam covers off before, as I've painted them and also recently stuck the non-adjust sticker on my cam cover. My Golf has already had some conversion kits. It's already had the bigger Weber carburettor put on it, which is why some of the parts may look different to the standard Golf. There's a single Allen key bolt on the side of the timing belt cover which holds it in place, which is what I'm removing here. And this was my first indication of how bad the head gasket has gone. That should be black.
Yeah.
I'm going to remove the old rocker cover gasket and replace it with a new one. It's always a good idea to do this with any gasket. Starting work on the side of the engine, I firstly removed the alternator belt, which I realised that I still needed to remove the actual pulleys on the bottom. So the pulleys on the bottom are the water pump pulley and the crank pulley that drive the alternator belt. The easiest access to these pulleys is through the wheel arch liner on the driver's side, if it's a right-hand drive car. So here I'm just going to start removing the inner wheel arch to gain access to the pulleys. I'm using a pry bar here just to help me get the crank pulley off, as that was quite tight on its little output shaft. Once both these pulleys were off, I could then access the lower bolts, which means I could turn the engine over by hand. Using a screwdriver down cylinder number 1, I could find top dead centre of the engine. Top dead centre, for those of you who don't know, is where the piston is right at the top of its travel and it can't go any higher. I'm just going around here one more time just to make sure that I'm at top dead centre, as this is key to the timing of the engine. I'm using a screwdriver as an indication to top dead centre because it shows exactly where the piston is and I can see it visually. Once I was happy with the timing of the engine, I marked it in its current position and released the tension on the tensioner so I could take the cam belt off. Before I went any further, I drained the coolant out of the car, as the head will be coming off very shortly. The easiest way to do this, in my opinion, on a Golf is just to unbolt the thermostat housing at the bottom of the engine. Finally, I could start work on removing the ancillaries connected to the cylinder head. There was 2 waterways, one at the front and one at the side. Here I'm just removing the choke cable connected to the carburettor. On this model of Golf, the exhaust manifold is connected to the downpipe by 2 giant C-clamps, which is what I'm removing here. These clamps are located right underneath the inlet manifold, so access to them is fairly limited. I will be replacing the exhaust manifold with a stainless steel tubular one, so I don't have to do this again. I'm removing a few brackets from the front of the engine to help removing the cylinder head a little bit easier. Finally, I started removing the head bolts, working from the centre and doing a spiral motion to stop the head from warping. On this engine there are 10 head bolts, 5 on each side. As I disconnected the exhaust manifold from the downpipe, I was leaving the two manifolds on as it was easier to remove them on a bench. I'd asked my dad very kindly to help me lift the cylinder head off, as they can be quite heavy.